Joining us now is Colm Lynch, who covers the UN for the Washington Post, and Rhonda Slim of the Middle East Institute. She's met with members of Kofi Annan's team and has regular contact with the opposition inside Syria. Colm Lynch, let me start with you. We knew diplomacy was not going well, but what happened here? Was there a final straw that led to Kofi Annan's decision?
Well, I think that everybody has anticipated that he would resign. It was just a matter of time. But I mean, the thing that really, the final straw was the veto in the Security Council last month. It was a clear indication that the big powers were split on this issue, that they weren't going to be able to agree on a concerted approach to resolving the crisis. And I think at that point, Kofi Annan just decided that if I don't have the backing of the big powers, that there's no way that we can apply pressure on the parties to calm and to cease shooting at each other.
Colm, this language we heard, fairly strong language, finger-pointing, name-calling in the Security Council. How unusual is that? And who's he calling out here? Who's he talking about?
Well, I guess he's talking about what's interesting is after the Security Council meeting this afternoon on Syria, the Russian ambassador Vitaly Churkin and the French ambassador Gérard Araud were exchanging insults. The Russian ambassador was complaining about the French decision to pull Annan's deputy back for a job in the Pentagon in the middle of the negotiations, thought that was kind of undercutting the diplomacy. The French ambassador responded that it was a stupid remark, that it was unfair to say that to say that this was a politically motivated decision. This is a high-level French, international diplomat, and he was needed and wanted by the French government. So, so it continues.
Rhonda Slim, what do you think is behind this decision by Kofi Annan? What's going on?
I think I agree with Colm in terms of he realized that he doesn't have the backing of the international community anymore, with pointing the finger at the disunity inside the national security, inside the Security Council. However, I would like to argue here that his plan was, in a way, was dead on arrival, partly because, as he pointed in his resignation letter today, the protagonists in Syria, whether it's the regime or the opposition, were not on board. The regime, on one hand, was not willing and not ready to go with the political transition process. Their only plan was to solve this conflict militarily, crush the uprising by force. And on the other hand, the opposition, the fact that the plan did not call explicitly for Assad to step down as a precondition for the political process to be launched, delegitimized the plan in the eyes of the opposition, especially in the activists inside Syria, who are now the most important player in this conflict.
Well, you met with... Well, we have a loud well, okay, there it goes. I think that's better. We had a loud noise behind you. I was going to say, you met with members of Kofi Annan's team. Were they frustrated? Did they become aware of this problem that you were just referring to? Was there a growing frustration that you could sense?
I met with them early June, and I could sense the frustration then. At the time, they were still hoping that they, along with the Arab League, will be able to bring the Syrian opposition together around a common platform. And this also did not come, eventually this did not come together, as we also, in the Arab League meeting, which failed in bringing the Syrian opposition together. They were also, of course, frustrated at the time by the failure of Russia, or by unwillingness of Russia to back resolution that will bring consequences on Assad for violating the plan, the peace plan.
Now, Colm Lynch, so where does this leave, the obvious question, where does this leave the diplomatic effort? Is there any way to pick up the pieces? Is there any plan behind the scenes to try to move forward at all?
It looks pretty stuck. I mean, the French ambassador said the differences in the council are irreconcilable. There is sort of, and most of the council members are saying that the logic, it's moving towards a military logic. We're seeing what's unfolding in Aleppo tonight. The top UN peacekeeping chief, Hervé Lazzous, told the council that he thought that the parties, he was convinced that the parties are preparing for one last final battle in Aleppo. So I think that this is moving away from a diplomatic track to the military track. And maybe, after this plays out, they might be able to kind of return to the diplomacy at some place down the road, but it'll be, a different game they're talking about then.
Rhonda Slim, does all that then have any impact on the ground, or are we way past this diplomacy at this point?
The activists on the ground are way past this diplomacy. I think, although the revolution started as a non-violent uprising, but faced with the brutal crackdown by the regime and the ability of the international community to bring any kind of pressure on Assad to abandon the military approach to which he and his advisor are wedded, I think the narrative for non-violence inside the opposition camp lost traction, and this came especially after the assault on Baba Amr in Homs early this year. So the belief now among activists, especially among rebel fighters, is that this will have to be settled militarily in the field, and that's why they keep calling on the international community to arm them.
And Rhonda, one more thing in our last minute here, because there were two other reports today. One from Reuters that the president had signed a directive allowing the CIA to help rebels. Another from McClatchy that the administration has now made it legal to collect money in the U.S. to send to the rebels. Many details, of course, of this on both these stories are still unclear at this point. But what do you make of those reports?
I think what's happening is that the United States, the U.S. administration, is trying to feel its way through the maze of the Syrian rebel camp, if we can say so. It's a very dynamic environment right now inside Syria. We are seeing armed factions appearing to the surface, emerging almost on a daily basis. And I think the United States, through the order that you refer to, which enables the CIA and other U.S. agencies to provide support to rebels short of armed support, enable these agencies and the U.S. administration to really do some sort of a triage process among the different rebel factions to find out who's influential, who's not influential, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, and start to identify which are the partners we would be working with if eventually President Obama decides to up the ante on our involvement and step in the fray of arming the rebels.
All right, Rhonda Lim, Colm Lynch, thank you both very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And you can track the history of the Syrian conflict, including the diplomatic efforts to end the fighting, in a timeline on our world page.